Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from exitautomation.com and welcome to part 10 of our Cucumber with Selenium course. And in this video I'll be talking about latest extent reporting version 4.x support with our course. And once again, before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 8 and 9 because this video is going to be a complete continuation of those videos. Alright, so let's get started. Let's all help to save tree, water and energy to save our mother planet Earth. Extent reporting. Extent report is a logger style API written for Java and .NET environment which allows creating HTML reports from test. And once again, the extent report has a lot of features. As you can see in the screenshot, it supports multiple type, it supports commonly used test frameworks, and it manages multiple projects, historical reports, trends, interactivity. And the report is really beautiful and it's highly configurable if you buy a professional version, by the way. So there are like two different versions available. One is the pro and one is the community. So if you buy the community version, probably you end up having just few features, but for the pro version you see there are different features available. So I would not really recommend you to buy a pro version initially, because if you're very familiar with community, you probably try to customize that. But if you still really need the bleeding edge feature which is available with the professional version, I would strongly recommend to go with Pro, which really helps the author who has developed this plugin and given us the community edition for free. So it really supports the developer, by the way. So as that said, the extent report can log data in both classical logging style or the BDD style. But we are going to be only discussing about the BDD styled version of it. So the extent pseudocode of the BDD style is going to be looking something like this. We are going to be creating an extent report class, and then within this extent report we are going to be creating a test, and then it is going to return as an extent test variable out from it. And followed by that, we are going to be calling a create feature class, because as you know, all the features are going to be holding the scenarios. We are going to be including the scenario within the feature, and since a scenario holds all the steps, we are going to be adding the steps within the scenario. So as you can see, it's like a sequence of chains of operations that we need to be performing. So first we need to create an object for extent report, and this extent report object is going to return as the extent test, and this extent test is going to be returning as create feature object, and this create feature is going to return a scenario followed by steps. So this is how things are going to be working, and that's how the pseudocode of extent report is going to be looking like. So finally, the report that we'll be creating is going to look something like this. And you can see it's really a nice report. It also has something very interesting in here. You can see it has the very cool dashboard on the down, and it has some steps meaning mentioned like what's really happening. So we are going to be discussing about this completely. So note, this is a basic course and we won't be covering following topics along the way. Something like parallel execution support, getting dynamic feature names, getting dynamic step failures, and running particular features via listeners. So those stuffs really requires a lot of effort. And again, I have not put a lot of effort for the basic course, because for the basic, I really feel that these informations are more than enough to get started. And if you really feel like you still have to go a level more, you can probably look at my advanced course, which is kind of very interesting to learn some of these advanced topics. But if you're just going to be getting started, I would really recommend you to stick with this video. So let's quickly see everything in action and understand how things work. So for that, I'm going to flip to my IntelliJ IDE. Alright, so this is the same video that we were discussing in our previous video. And here in our last video, we discussed what is this test.listener and how we can call that in the test.xml file. And today we are going to be working with what is called as an extent report. And as that said, the extent report is once again going to be a pom.xml file that we need to add a dependency, because that's going to be something coming from what is called as Maven. And as I said in the introduction video of this upgrade, we are going to be using the latest and the greatest version of extent reporting. So I'll be just looking for extent report for Maven, and if you hit that, you can see you'll end up with the Maven repository here. It still shows 3, but if you can just go to the extent reports here, there is 4.0.9 just released on Jan, the latest bleeding edge feature. So I'm just going to copy this here and then I'll be closing this completely, and I'm just going to be adding the extend report. So once I add this, you can see that it is going to be adding the extend report for me over here. There is also something called as extend reporter Cucumber 4 adapter. So I will probably be discussing that if I could able to make that thing work. I have not tried that yet, so I probably will try it myself, and I can add that video as well. So as of now, the work is progressing my side, so I'll be adding that video as well. So as that said, this is the only reference that we need to add for the extend report, and it seems to be like adding some other dependency here. So you can see that we have so many libraries this time, which is really cool. And as that said, we are going to be creating a new class file here this time. And again, this class file is something which is very, very important for the extend report itself. So I'll just call this as extend report util.class file. So I'm just going to be hitting OK. And this class file is going to be extending our base util. So you can now see that our base util by itself has something called as WebDriver, but now this time we are going to be extending this particular base util even further to have some other features. So as I said, we are discussing all these things on 2019 on 30th of Jan. So I'll just add that, right? So we are pretty new now, and we are going to be adding some new variables here. So this time we are going to be adding the public of extend reports. You can see there is something called as extend report class, and this is the extend report that I'll be working with. So I'm just adding that, and you can see if I go to this extend reports class, I can go to the reference, and I can see that this particular extend report class basically has a lot of different options, something like attach reporter, get started with reporter, and it has something called as create test, and you can see this create test are like variations. It has a Gherkin formatter model, and you can see it has a Gherkin keyword class in turn, and similarly there are some create test with just test name. You know what is the difference? Basically, you can see all these methods by itself are synchronized, which means they are designed to support parallel threading, which is really, really cool, and that's why they are synchronized. And the difference of these methods being overloaded is because these are for the BDD style, and as I said in the slide, it supports both BDD and non-BDD format. So this create test method is for the non-BDD format, whereas this BDD is for the BDD format. That's why it's a Gherkin keyword, right? So you can see there are so many different methods available. Just go around and play around with this class file, and you will eventually get to know a lot of details about it. And then we are going to be adding a public static extend test variable, and you will understand why I'm actually been doing it. So as I said in the pseudocode, we are basically going to be adding this extend test especially to have what is called as a scenario definition. So I'm going to be adding a scenario def, which is going to be for my scenario definition, and then I'll be just copy that, I'll be pasting it here, and I'll be calling this guy as what is called as feature. And as you can see, the features as well as scenario are both extend test. So basically a feature actually holds scenario, and this scenario holds the steps, but there is nothing called a step or extend step or something like that. We have to incorporate that within this particular scenario definition. And once again, it seems to be a little confusing at this point of time that why I'm really creating all these stuffs. I'm just trying to make sure that it really imitates exactly like how we discussed in our slide. And finally, I'm also going to be storing the files in one of the location within my local machine. So I'm just going to be calling this the report location, and then I will just store that in my users report folder, right? So these are the different kinds of variables that I really require to be used within my extend report util. So now I'm going to start creating, or maybe I'm going to start working with this particular extend report util. So the first thing which I'm going to do is to create a file name. So basically I'm going to store the file within this particular location, which is nothing but the report location. And once again, the report location is coming because I've extended the base util class here. And then I'm just going to call this as extend report.html, right? And then I'll be start working from there. So as you know, the first thing we need to do is to create an extend reports object. So for that, I'm just going to be calling the extend report object. And once again, for doing that, I'm just going to create a very super simple method here. So let me call this as public void extend report method, and within this report I'm just gonna call the extend method itself, extend variable itself. So I'm just gonna call this as extend is equal to new of extend reports, right? So once I add that, it eventually adds the reference for me. And once this extend reports is being added, and then I'm going to be calling what is called as an extend HTML reporter. And since there are different kinds of reporter available within extend, so you can see if I put like extend, you can see there is something called as extend BDD reporter, and there is something called as extend HTML reporter, event reporter, extend card reporter, extend email reporter, extend claw reporter, extend logger reporter. So these are the different new reporters which was introduced by the author who has developed this extend. So if I just go to the extendreports.com website, and you can see this is the new website he has created, the author, which is really cool. And if you could see here, these are different kinds of reporter. As I said, extend HTML reporter, which is available in professional. There is a logger reporter, which is available in community as well. But you can see that the event reporter is sadly not available in community version. Similarly, the tabular reporter is sadly not available in community, and neither the HTML report, card report, or BDD report. But you can see the claw report, or something which is used for the historical reporting purpose, which we have already discussed in our advanced video series, is somehow supported in the community version as well. So these are the different reporters available within extend, and the one which we are going to be working today is going to be the extend HTML reporter. So the HTML reporter is something very cool because it actually has an option to save our report into an HTML format. So I'm just using the extend HTML reporter, and then I'm just passing the file name here. So this is going to be the file name which is going to be saved within this particular HTML report. And then we're going to be just calling this extend HTML reporter, and then there is something called as config method. And then with this, I'm just going to set some theme. So there is different kinds of themes available, like theme.standard, theme dark, and there is something like value of, I don't know what does that mean. For sure there is something else, but I'm going to be using the dark theme, which I mostly like, and I'm just using that. And then HTML reporter dot config dot, there is something called a set document title. So you can see I can set different kinds of stuff here, like correct relative, auto create relative path media, and then set CSS, set document title, set encoding, set JS, set level, set protocol. So you can see there are different kinds of stuffs available. The one which we are going to be using is the document title. So here I'm just going to be mentioning that as test report for Selenium basic. All right, and then HTML reporter dot config dot set encoding. So you can keep on setting a lot of different stuff here, not just the one that you can see here. So I'm going to be setting all these things over here, right? So once everything is done, I'm then finally going to attach this reporter, which is nothing but the HTML reporter, within the extend variable that I just created. And as that said, this is the extend report method that we have to create for our extend reporting utility. And then we are going to be adding some screenshot features as well. So basically, if there is any test fails, we are going to be adding a screenshot along with the failure. So for that, I'm going to be creating one more method. I'm going to call this as extend report screenshot, and then I'll be adding some of the code here. So as you know, for taking a screenshot, we are basically going to be using the very simple approach. So I'm just going to be using the var keyword here. As you can see, we can now see the var symbol. For some reason, it is showing us in red. The reason is because if you go to the preferences once again, and if you just search for JDK, it would have turned into what is called as 1.5, which is not good. So I'm just going to be turning it back to 10. So once I turn it to 10, and once I go to the project structure, you can see it has again turned into language level of 5, and you can see now the var is being recognized as usual, right? So this is the screenshot that we're going to be taking in, and as I said, for the screenshot, we have an interface called as take screenshot interface. So I'm just going to call that, and then I'll be calling our driver object that we have created already in our base util class, right? So it's added here, and then we're going to call this get screenshot as, and then I'm going to output this as file. So you can see you can output this to byte or base64. I'm basically going to be calling as file, and then I'm going to do a quick file copy. So I'll just show you the other way around as well, because there is something called as relative path, which is available in the HTML reporter config. But as of now, I'm going to be using the classical way of working with it so that it is going to be more meaningful. So I'm just going to be calling that. So src.toPath, which is going to be converting that to the path, and then I'm going to be adding that to my file's location. So I'm just going to be calling the file, which is going to be something available in java.io, and I'm going to be calling the report location plus screenshot.png. So you can see that we have one file screenshot name. So you can see, think of a situation where if there are multiple screenshots, for sure this is going to be failing. But as of now, you can see that this is basic course, and I don't really want to extend this even further. So I have just made it to be very simple as much as possible, right? So I'm just going to be adding the toPath here as well. Alt enter and add an exception to the method signature. All right. And finally, we're going to say that there is a failure in the test. So I'm just going to be putting a scenario definition dot fail. So basically, this is going to be the one which is going to fail the test for me. Again, let's not discuss about that yet. We'll be discussing about that in our next video. But as of now, this is the extend report screenshot method. And finally, I'm going to flush the report. So for flushing the report, I'm just going to be calling what is called as flush report method, and this guy is going to be calling the flush, which is available within the extend report. So now we have three methods, guys: the extend report method, extend report screenshot method, and flush report method for our extend report utility. So this is more like most important features that we really require for extend to be working fine. So in our next video, we are going to make use of these methods to be called within the listener files, and also how we can leverage the power of login steps with all the different kinds of steps to be added so that you can display them in the reporter. So once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and stay tuned for our next video. Thank you.